In 1975, Peter Gabriel made a choice most artists never recover from. He walked away from a band on the brink of success. Not out of ego, not out of spite, but because he saw what was coming and didn't want to be part of the machine. This is the story of the moment he left everything and found something bigger. By 1974, Genesis had transformed from Charterhouse schoolboys into progressive rock contenders. Their theatrical live shows, anchored by Gabriel's costume changes and dramatic performances, had built them a devoted following. Albums like Foxtrot and Selling England by the Pound established their artistic credibility, but success came with a price. The music industry of the 1970s often involved managers booking tours far in advance. Genesis found themselves caught in this relentless cycle. Finish an album, promote it, tour extensively, then start again. Gabriel reportedly felt he was getting to be part of a machine.
There were a variety of reasons. The success on the one hand, it did seem as if the album tour production line of the rock business, I didn't want to become a formula rock and roll star.
As the frontman, Gabriel garnered most of the media attention. His elaborate costumes and theatrical stage presence made him the visual focus of the band. While this brought Genesis publicity, it created internal tension.
There was some encouragement in the early days. There was a few people who liked us, as I say. And I think really what we were able to bypass a little bit, the fact that we weren't critically very well received, by the fact that I think Peter and his costumes and stuff started to get us a bit of attention, when you first put on these sort of the dresses and foxes' heads and everything, and we suddenly started getting a picture in the paper,
Keyboardist Tony Banks particularly resented Gabriel becoming the band's public face, later admitting he felt Gabriel was getting too big for the group. The growing success meant more pressure, more touring, and less creative freedom. The band that had begun as an artistic outlet was becoming an obligation. As venues grew and expectations mounted, Gabriel felt increasingly disconnected from the initial joy of music making.
Big time stuff happening with sort of long tours being planned way in the future. And I just felt I was getting to be part of a machine. And I also felt I was becoming a sort of stereotype, sort of rock star, or falling into wanting that ego gratification.
In 1974, as Genesis worked on their ambitious concept album, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, film director William Friedkin reached out to Gabriel. Fresh off his success with The Exorcist, Friedkin was drawn to Gabriel's theatrical storytelling and offered him a chance to collaborate on a film project. For Gabriel, the opportunity represented something beyond Genesis, a chance to explore new creative territory. He considered taking a month away for the project. It wasn't abandonment, it was expansion.
Probably because Peter was being thrust out as the star in a way, the media would only concentrate on Peter really, which was strange in a group that was as sort of as democratic as we were in a way, and the way everything came, music and everything was done. And obviously during the making of, while we were actually writing this album, Peter actually got an offer to do this film script for William Friedkin, and he decided he was going to do it and went off.
The other members of Genesis, Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, Phil Collins, and Steve Hackett, saw it differently. To them, the band was finally gaining momentum. Any disruption threatened their trajectory. They warned Gabriel that his departure, even temporarily, could damage everything they'd built. Faced with this ultimatum, Gabriel reluctantly declined Friedkin's offer. But the seed had been planted. The rejection amplified Gabriel's growing frustration with the band's limitations. If he couldn't take a single month to explore a new creative opportunity without threatening the group's existence, how constrained was he really? This crossroads revealed the fundamental tension. Genesis was becoming successful enough to demand complete dedication from its members. Yet Gabriel was developing ambitions that extended beyond the band's boundaries. Something would have to give.
He did leave, because we gave him an ultimatum. You choose Friedkin or you stay with the band. So he went. William Friedkin I didn't want to split the band up. I don't even know if this is going to work. This is just an idea. So Peter comes back. But at that point, of course, we all know that this could happen at any time.
In November 1974, 4 shows into the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway tour, Gabriel informed his bandmates he was leaving Genesis. The timing couldn't have been worse. The band had 102 shows scheduled, and Gabriel's personal life was in turmoil. His wife, Jill, was experiencing a difficult pregnancy with their daughter, Anna. The contrast between his band's demands and his family's needs made his choice clear. Surprisingly, the band convinced Gabriel to keep his decision secret until the end of the tour in May 1975. What followed was a masterclass in silent suffering. Night after night, Gabriel performed elaborate shows for fans who had no idea each performance was part of a long goodbye. Behind his theatrical masks and costumes, Gabriel carried the weight of a decision that would reshape his future and that of his bandmates. The secrecy took an emotional toll. Gabriel reportedly expressed guilt, saying, "We hadn't paid off our debt, and things were really beginning to take off, and now I was f***ing it up for them." After years of struggle, the band was finally clearing its debts and building momentum. Gabriel's exit threatened to derail everything they'd worked for. For months, Gabriel lived this double life, performing as the face of Genesis while privately preparing to walk away. The strain of balancing family crises with the band's grueling schedule and the secret of his planned departure wore on him. Yet he honored his commitment, completing every scheduled show before making his exit public.
Definitely the right thing for me to have done. And, clearly it was good for them because it sort of brought Phil out front and gave everyone a bit more space, I think.
The making of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway exposed deeper fractures within Genesis. For this concept album, Gabriel took control of the lyrics, crafting an elaborate story about a character named Rael. However, the music-making process remained firmly in Tony Banks's domain. This division of labor created tension. While Gabriel immersed himself in the narrative, he became increasingly isolated from the musical direction. Banks asserted his influence over the compositions, establishing a power dynamic that left Gabriel feeling creatively stifled. The media attention focused on Gabriel as the band's frontman only exacerbated the situation. Banks later admitted resentment over Gabriel's prominence, seeing him as overshadowing the group. This creative power struggle made collaboration increasingly difficult. Despite Gabriel writing all lyrics for The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, except The Light Dies Down on Broadway, co-written with Banks and Rutherford, he felt his broader artistic vision being sidelined. The album, though ambitious, reflected the growing creative divide within the band. According to Tony Banks, Gabriel's departure was a relief, though Gabriel emphasized freedom, reflecting differing perspectives. The friction between Gabriel and Banks highlighted a fundamental issue. In a band built on collaboration, the balance of power had shifted. For Gabriel, the only resolution was to forge his own path. The financial implications of Gabriel's decision intensified its impact. By 1975, Genesis had spent years touring and recording without significant financial reward. As Gabriel prepared to leave, Gabriel noted the band was clearing its debts during the Lamb tour. "We hadn't paid off our debt and things were really beginning to take off," Gabriel later recalled. His departure came just as Genesis stood on the verge of addressing their long-standing financial issues, making his choice all the more significant. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway tour was proving successful, generating the revenue needed to address the band's financial situation.
In terms of songs, I always think of The Lamb Lies Down itself being the sort of last song that Peter and I kind of ever wrote together, because we'd written a lot in the early days together. And things. It was a pretty good song to end on, really.
Gabriel's announcement affected this precarious position. By walking away at this moment, he risked not only his future, but potentially those of his bandmates as well. This financial timing added emotional weight to an already difficult decision. Gabriel wasn't just leaving a creative partnership. He was departing during a critical financial period. The guilt of potentially undermining his friend's financial recovery after years of shared struggle, made his departure all the more gut-wrenching. For Gabriel, this context made his choice a true leap of faith. He was walking away from not just potential recognition, but the financial security that had eluded Genesis throughout their early years. The decision to prioritize his creative freedom and family over this improvement demonstrated the depth of his conviction. In 1976, following his 1975 departure from Genesis, Gabriel was inspired by a moment atop Solsbury Hill in Somerset, England. This moment of clarity would transform into his definitive statement of independence. Solsbury Hill, with its distinctive 7/4 rhythm and uplifting melody, captured Gabriel's emotional journey away from Genesis. The song embodied his resolve to let go of the constraints that had bound him to the band. It wasn't bitter or angry, it was liberating. Working with producer Bob Ezrin in Toronto, Gabriel recorded the track for his self-titled debut album. Surprisingly, he nearly left Solsbury Hill off the record, uncertain of its strength. Ezrin's insistence saved what would become Gabriel's signature song.
So he gets an idea he's going to do something, that guy's going to do it. But at the same time, he also has a kind of measure of self-doubt, on a certain level, a little bit of self-examination.
As I think all artists do.
All artists do. That's what I said. He's a true artist.
Released in February 1977, Solsbury Hill reached number 13 on the UK charts and number 68 in the US. More importantly, it established Gabriel's solo identity. The song proved he could create compelling music entirely separate from the Genesis sound. For Gabriel, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Failure would have validated doubts about his decision to leave Genesis. Success would vindicate his choice.
So he was compelled to leave the band to go out and pursue a career as Peter Gabriel. But he was also, understandably so, a little nervous about this whole thing, about stepping out and being not just the front guy, but the whole guy. They asked me to work with him, and we got along great. And I got him to have a good time.
Solsbury Hill became not just a hit single, but a declaration of artistic independence. Proof that Gabriel's risk had been worth taking. The song's creation represented Gabriel's emotional and professional rebirth. Standing on that hill in Somerset, looking out over the countryside, he had transformed the end of one chapter into the triumphant beginning of another. When Gabriel's departure was finally announced in the music press in August 1975, Genesis moved forward by selecting Phil Collins as vocalist after auditions. The music world watched skeptically, expecting the band to fade without its charismatic frontman. What unfolded instead was a fascinating twist of fate. Genesis didn't merely survive without Gabriel, they flourished. Their 1976 album, A Trick of the Tail, demonstrated they could evolve beyond Gabriel's theatrical vision, pushing toward a more accessible sound that would eventually lead them to stadium-filling success. The band that had lost its voice found a new one, proving that no single member, not even their iconic frontman, was indispensable. For Gabriel, watching his former band thrive created a complex emotional landscape. While focusing on his own debut album, he faced the double pressure of competing with both Genesis's past and their surprising new chapter. Every new Genesis success raised an unspoken question. Had he made a catastrophic career mistake? His artistic freedom came with the gnawing possibility that he had abandoned a winning formula just as it was about to pay dividends. His self-titled 1977 debut and the success of Solsbury Hill silenced those doubts. Gabriel hadn't just survived the split. He had established an entirely new artistic identity. Both parties had gambled heavily on their separate paths, and against all odds, both had won. What began as a painful separation evolved into a dual triumph that nobody had predicted. The creative differences that had once driven them apart had actually enabled two distinctive artistic paths that might never have been possible had they remained together. the music world gained not one successful act, but two, each free to explore territories the combined unit could never have reached. Peter Gabriel's departure from Genesis in 1975 and the subsequent creation of Solsbury Hill represent one of rock music's most successful artistic gambles. The song became more than just a hit. It established Gabriel's enduring solo identity and justified his decision to leave at the height of Genesis's ascent. Solsbury Hill reached number 13 in the UK and anchored Gabriel's gold-certified debut album, estimated to have generated significant revenue through Solsbury Hill and his gold-certified debut album. Meanwhile, Genesis evolved under Phil Collins, eventually achieving massive success with albums like Invisible Touch. Genesis was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2010, followed by Gabriel as a solo artist in 2014. The creative tensions that once divided them ultimately spawned two influential musical legacies. What makes this split remarkable is its relative amicability. Unlike many band breakups marked by lawsuits and public feuds, Gabriel's exit, while emotionally complex, remained professionally respectful. This allowed both parties to build on their shared history rather than be defined by its end. Gabriel's subsequent ventures, including founding the WOMAD Festival in 1982 and establishing Real World Records, demonstrated the broader vision he once struggled to pursue within Genesis. By choosing creative freedom over the security of his established band, Gabriel didn't just find a new voice, he discovered an entirely new musical language. Solsbury Hill stands as both an ending and a beginning, the final chord of Gabriel's Genesis chapter, and the first triumphant note of his solo journey. In walking away from certainty to chase artistic freedom, Gabriel didn't leave success behind. He redefined it entirely.